We'll get through this together. But for now, let's talk about one of my favorite subjects, incident response and cloud forensics. So we'll go through the state of incident response, basically some of the attacks that we're seeing in the wild today, and some of the different safeguards you can do to prevent these different types of attacks. We'll also go through how incident response enables businesses and the migration to cloud computing that we're seeing even more fast-tracked today, and some of the challenges that cybersecurity folks are dealing with in those cloud environments. I also want to go through some of the benefits of focusing on incident response in those cloud environments and prioritizing incident response, and of course, automation, something near and dear to my heart. So some of the state of incident response right now, I think ransomware is something that everyone has dealt with. Something that's definitely probably the top thing on any CSO's or CIO's mind, and anybody that's working remotely, frankly, these days. It's a scary thing to have all your files encrypted and a big scary warning pop up on your screen saying you have to give us, 0.3 Bitcoin or whatever it is nowadays. This has just pretty much doubled every year, almost, as far as infections and different types of attacks through ransomware as a service. Basically, there's a whole infrastructure and business that's all focused around ransomware. There's a huge rise in 2013, end of 2013 for ransomware. We started seeing delivery through basically traditional, what could be called APT or advanced threat techniques. There was Visual Basic embedded Microsoft Word documents and other type things that were designed to be delivered and opened by the recipient. There was also leveraging of living off the land binaries and zero-day vulnerabilities such as Eternal Blue and all those things. Another huge motivator is, of course, profit. And in order to get that profit, cryptocurrency was probably the single biggest influencer on this becoming as prevalent as it is. Having a anonymous way to transfer funds that is very difficult for a forensic accountant to track down was a huge piece of why ransomware has skyrocketed as the primary really thing that us incident responders deal with. So some of the response action is, try to determine the method of compromise. It's usually phishing. Sometimes it'll be delivered through network scanning and things like that, looking for open admin ports. Determine the sensitive data loss. There's usually some types of compliance or privacy requirements or regulations that you have to comply with. So yeah, usually part of the fear of, oh my God, we're infected is, oh my God, what data got leaked and did they steal data in addition to just encrypting it so they can't see it? Usually it's not that. Usually it's just the attackers want money, but sometimes you can see data being exfiltrated and you got to determine that. But before you do the top two things, usually what an organization is going to do is to attempt to restore the data and implement controls to prevent it from happening in the future. And primarily the best way to do this is backups with versioning. You got to make sure that the attacker can't hit your backup and crush those or encrypt those is one of the main things you could do. Another huge thing that we're seeing these days is account takeover or business email compromise is another term that you'll see out there. Primarily it will exploit email just because organizations communicate and everything through email. They send documents and if they're not using phishing or delivering payloads, sometimes just attacking the human that works in these organizations is a great way to do it. They can script the compromise to, what you usually see is a account harvesting email that is sent to the victim, and it says, hey, if you need to open up this document or whatever, you have to input your credentials. And unfortunately, if you're using just single factor authentication, username and password, the attacker could get that and then log into the victim's account, and then could start sending fraudulent messages. Primarily, they're focused on trying to get VIPs or someone with some clout in an organization that can authorize an ACH or wire transfer payment. These are usually large wire transfers that organizations have to do to just move at the speed of business. Those fraudulent emails are usually sent to an accounting person that says, hey, transfer X amount of dollars to this bank account, which is controlled by the attacker. Attacker gets it, migrates the money around the world, and it's almost impossible to get back. If the VIP is not compromised, the attacker will usually spread to victims' contacts, and that's why you'll see these messages from people that you trust that get through email filters, is because they are from actual compromised email accounts. Some of the response actions you can do is, of course, change the passwords, attempt to recover any funds that were lost, determine if any sensitive data was exfiltrated, and I'll talk to a tool that you could use to parse some of the Office 365 aspects. And of course, implement two-factor authentication. If you get anything out of this presentation, you should probably do that. It's 99.9% of these attacks are through single-factor authenticated usernames in passwords for emails. Very important. I'd probably add on top of that too, if a attacker, if you get an email from someone you trust and it's valid and it's an actual credential harvesting attack, it's probably good to call the recipient, let them know. And then the third category, I kind of call this my catch-all category. There's breaches and advanced actors. We still see a little bit of this. Frankly, the other two methods are a lot more lucrative, so we see a lot more of those attacks, and they affect businesses directly. Advanced persistent threat actors and the large PII breach attacks were something that's been going on since cybersecurity really started increasing in the early or mid 2000s with Heartland and those types of breaches. But now we're seeing a little bit more just scanning and looking for vulnerabilities, RDP or SSH that is available on the network, and attackers will get onto those servers, and sometimes they'll pull the PI off and do a large-scale breach. But mostly what we're seeing is a lot of these attackers like to remain quiet, keep building up their own bot network. They'll maybe throw a crypto miner agent on the system to possibly do some, bring a little bit of funds in. Sometimes, it's through spear phishing, and there's interactive operations pulling off very sensitive, very sensitive data out of the network. But you don't see or hear about that as much, and it's usually still targeting your large scale DoD and organizations like that. So the response action for this would be to contain the attack. Of course, try to get a hold of what's going on. If it's just a server in your cloud environment that's possibly been compromised, you can walk through some of the methods for containing and respond to that. Of course, determine the method of loss of data and implement your large-scale breach responses if you have that. And of course, implement any safeguards to prevent this from happening in the future. Patching and closing admin ports. So I'll take a step back and talk through something that I've wrote an article a couple years ago on this. But so if your organization experiences an attack in the last, for any of these last three different types of categories, I'd put it, incident response will definitely prove its value. Just an ounce of preparation is huge. We can see that now in a lot of things. There's also, when you are focused on incident response, you're focused on the actual attackers and what is actually happening. You can very much steer the spend for your cybersecurity program onto actual attacks. And I really feel that the blank checks that are written to cybersecurity programs are starting to dry up. And when you can actually say, this is being attacked, and this is a risk and a vulnerability that our organization has, it helps you to actually give you that threat piece of the risk calculation. Instead of just saying, hey, this is a vulnerability, we need to fix this. When you can say this is a vulnerability and this is the actual threat, it really helps you focus those dollars. But something I really feel, and I wrote it on my blog about a year ago, is incident response enables innovation. A lot of the onerous draconian controls that cybersecurity people will put in place really stifle a lot of folks from from agility, from it increases a more significant rigid focus in the organization. There's not the ability to cross-pollinate and for information to flow properly. When you implement those heavy controls, you really don't foster the innovative spirit in an organization. And it's very, very important for those organizations to have that. So when you focus on incident response, you can save your cybersecurity resources to focus on true issues, and you can respond to issues instead of rapidly with automation, as opposed to just trying to move everything left of boom. Sometimes just making boom as small as possible is a much better spend. As I migrate into this, COVID-19 is a perfect example. We can prevent a ton, but not having the proper resources in incident response has shown to be a huge problem, and improper messaging and all sorts of things that are happening these days, really making things more difficult than it needs to be. But something where we've seen a huge migration is to the cloud. The scale up until maybe a year or two ago, it was still probably more cost effective to have your own data center with all your own server on software, depending on your size. If it got too big, okay, maybe not. Smaller applications, maybe not. But it has really moved to where huge application profiles and application stacks could be migrated to the cloud. And it's just too flexible and cost effective to be able to use a lot of the resources and different capabilities that the cloud has to offer. It's very available, very scalable. You can secure it, and you can manage cost very, very well if you know what you're doing. It's also distributed, which is very pertinent in these current days. So, of course, it's a new technology. We're going to have challenges from a cybersecurity perspective. There's a single administrator that has access to the entire application stack, which, of course, you can fix with proper architecture and tons of processes and procedures and all that other stuff. But when you do that, you're going to stifle a whole bunch of innovation and learning of the process. Of course, developers may not know networking systems, and networking systems engineers may not know the application stack as well as the developers do, and all sorts of different jobs in between. Segmenting and locking down different resources very much limits builders and developers. We're removing the benefit of actually migrating to the cloud. There's limitless resources, and of course, with that comes limitless cost. You can spin up as you use it, and you will just get charged more and more and more. It can get pretty pricey. It's also different than traditional information technology. It's a whole different skill set. So you have to train that. And of course, there's data governance, which I'm not going to get into here, but it's something to definitely be concerned about. So why should I prioritize IR in cloud environments? There's architecture, there's processes, there's all those other things that are really important that you should do, but I argue that incident response is probably primary because controls prevent the staff from learning any cloud environments. So it's a whole new, like I said, a whole new IT. It's not traditional IT. It's a whole new skill set. So you have to ensure that your current people are able to learn a lot of the new skill set. Yes, you could hire all new people, but that's going to be extremely expensive and difficult, and it's not going to go well. Just trust me on this one. Staff are going to make mistakes. They're going to be using these new technologies. They're not going to know what they're doing. They're going to make mistakes. You have to focus on incident response. The attack surface of the cloud is massive. It's designed to be that way because it's very distributed. But the response and for incident response can be automated. So you can really do this quickly. All cloud environments provide programmatic access. Some are better than others. I won't go into those, but all of them should provide some type of either API, software development kit, CLI, or something that you can change. You can do infrastructure as code. It does require a solid alerting for potentially malicious activity. So you have to find misconfigurations, any attacks in the environment. You have to detect those. So part of your incident response program is going to be definitely detecting those types of attacks. A lot of the different cloud providers recommend auto isolation and building an incident response instance into the network if you're using, an instance, some type of cloud virtual machine. You can pull the memory if it's or snapshot the instance to capture the memory. If it's an instance, I know there's containers and there's a lot of serverless activities that operations that can happen. But you're going to see if you're migrating from IT to cloud, you're probably going to be using cloud virtual machines. So here's a couple tools that I'd recommend. AWS again recommends isolating the incident for the Amazon Web Services. They have in their training. There's a clean room forensics where they actually use CloudFormation and build out its own network and PBC and all that. It's probably a little advanced. You can get to that later. AWS _IR is very solid. It's a great tool set for capturing either S3 information or EC2 different issues. Really solid. Even key compromise, I've used it quite a bit. It's a great tool. As far as Azure, which is probably the other thing that I know quite a bit about, is workflow automation is kind of like the CloudFormation stack for AWS. You can actually do the isolation and imaging and responding to alerts that you get from a security center type of alert. I actually really like their security center interface. It's really great for doing analysis. The AWS Detective, I think, is kind of a competing technology, which I haven't gotten into much either. Some of the OCI Oracle pieces are kind of interesting for cloud work, but I haven't gotten into it as much as I've done the forensics automation with incident response. in AWS and Azure. So let's. I did promise you a tool for business email compromise analysis. There's a tool called P-Shell. There is the Exchange commandlets for PowerShell that work with Office 365. This I find to be a little bit better for diving into the different issues that you're going to have with a mailbox. Probably determine if you have the proper login turned on, what data was lost, what data might have been compromised, who sent where the emails were sent from the compromised email. Again, this is you don't really have to worry about data loss as much. Probably just confirm it's not there if you can. But for account takeover and business email compromise, it's going to be profit motivated. So let's say in your environment you're going to start doing virtual machines or something like that. For our virtual desktops, EDR is a great category for this type of suite. There's a bunch of different products there. That's the Enterprise Detection and Response suite. That if you could afford that, that's great. But there's a lot of good scripts, just like the AWS-_IR script, which is free, open source, that you are more than welcome to use. This PowerShell IR script, you can Google PowerShell-IR, and it'll pop up in GitHub. You run it on an endpoint, a Windows endpoint, and you get all the artifacts you need to make a quick determination of what may have occurred on that system without having to do full disk forensics. So in summary, again, invest in your incident response piece. A little bit really goes a long way. You really learn where to focus your environment. You can prevent your organization from going under from either a breach or a ransomware incident, things like that. But if you after you've invested in a little bit of IR, either an IR person or given it an additional duty of incident response, implement some controls. Two-factor authentication for anything that is internet facing is critical. There is, if you can log in with an email and a password, so can the attacker. And all they have to do is know it. And if you put your password into the wrong thing, then attacker controls, they've got it. So 99.9% of all the business email compromises and attacks are going to be from single-factor authentication. Close your administrative ports. I say 22 and 3389, but probably Telnet or any other ports that are available to the internet. You should close those. Especially if you have single-factor authentication turned on for those ports. It's very important. Backup critical files. I would just say back up your data. Ensure versioning is turned on. Multiple versions of the software, so you can go back to restore point if you have to. Those are probably the three primary things that all organizations should do. If you're, a small mom and pop pharmacy down the street, or if you're a giant organization, you should do this in all your environments. The cloud is here to stay. We've learned that with this COVID-19 SARS-2 epidemic, pandemic thing that we got going on. It's here. You've got to learn it. The SaaS piece, the cloud piece, the VM piece. If you're in technology and you haven't learned it, you're going to be hurt. You're behind the curve. You're behind the curve now. And automate your response and analysis. So I talked to the response piece, but the analysis piece, once you start to learn these command line and API methods, start to automate on top of that, right? After you figure out how to analyze a remote desktop port that was open, write a couple scripts that will parse that data and let you know if a system's been compromised as quick as possible. You could run scripts on servers as you stand them up, do your analysis, shoot an email to yourself and spin it back down. It's not that difficult. So that pretty much summarizes.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. It's been a really wonderful presentation, and I hope all our attendees has gained a lot of information and knowledge from this webinar. So now, before we start the question and answer session, so I would like to inform all our attendees about our Certified Ethical Hacking Program, which is in sync with today's topic. So let me begin with the information about Certified Ethical Hacking Program. So EC Council's CH maps to many ethical hacking roles in the industry like security analyst, information security analyst, certified ethical hacker, security consultant, site administrator, and network management executive. Anyone with CS certification is eligible for 18,000 plus number of immediate job openings with an average salary of $90,000 to 1 lakh per annum. So I would like to inform all our attendees, if you are interested to know more, kindly take part in the poll, which is going to be conducted now, and let us know your preferred mode of training. We will EC Council will reach out to you. So I request all attendees who all have already been taken a part in this kind of poll in our previous webinars. I request them to not to again repeat the situation. So this is only for the new people who have just joined for the first time and would like to know more about this program. Thank you so much. So much for this wonderful presentation. I hope all our attendees has gained a lot of information.
I hope so too.
So are you ready for the question and answers? We have a lot of questions coming in from the attendees.
I'm happy to. Sounds good.
Yeah, sure. Let me just begin.